morning. I want to inform that in the heart of the Virgin Islands, where every whisper of the trade winds and every wave that breaks on our shores tells a story, we are reminded of the rich history and culture of these spaces. Our stories are just not echoes of the past, they are guiding light illuminating our path toward the future. Today, I stand before you with We Are All Stewards of Culture and Heritage campaign for 2024 Virgin Islands History Month. This campaign is not just a catchy slogan, it's a rallying cry for parents, teachers, and students alike. It serves as a gentle reminder that preserving our cultural heritage is not merely confined to the pages of history books. It permeates every aspect of our lives. Educators, I urge you to embrace our cultural standards and integrate them seamlessly into your lesson plans using platforms like Lesson Design Studio and Go Plans to infuse the spirit of our islands into every subject and every grade level. In addition to these initiatives that we're having, I'm thrilled to announce 3 exciting projects generously sponsored by VIA, our largest telecommunication company. From Students Digitized Storytelling Challenge to Environmental Stewardship Program Challenges and the Teachers VI History Door Challenge, there are ample opportunities for everyone to participate and contribute to the preservation of our culture. Today, we are experiencing a captivating presentation on storytelling through film and digital tools featuring the Virgin Islands, acclaimed journalist and filmmaker, Peter Bailey. Let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Bailey. He is a St. Thomas journalist and filmmaker. He gained recognition with his 2021 documentary, Paradise Discovered, Unbreakable Virgin Islands. This film explored the resilience of the Virgin Islands in the aftermath of Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017. The first installment depicted the community's unity and mutual support during challenging times, earning praise for its portrayal of resilience and solidarity. In Paradise Discovered, Unbreakable Virgin Islands 2.0, Bailey delved deeper into the cultural customs and traditions that have sustained the Virgin Islands through adversity. Through interviews with friends, neighbors, government officials, Bailey showcased the strength of community bonds and the enduring resilience of islanders. Bailey is a modern-day storyteller. He has transitioned from writing for newspapers and magazines to hosting the talk show Nightcap. He has actively engaged the youth of the Virgin Islands, bringing his interviews from subjects directly close to them and fostering inclusivity and understanding of different perspectives. Let us all welcome Mr. Bailey.
Thank you so much, Director Brown. I'm so happy to be with so many amazing Virgin Islanders on Virgin Islands History Month. As Director Brown said, man, I think that this is such an exciting time for educators and our students because we're in an information age. Years ago, just quickly about my background, writing for Newsweek and Time and the Village Voice, a younger me, I remember being a journalist and stories about the Caribbean and our people. It really was hard to get in the magazine because, we weren't the status quo. We transitioned out of social media, this new media device where really everyone has the power of narrative in their hands. I was visiting a school on St. John this week, and I discussed how the students, and as teachers, you guys could probably relate. Years ago, when you would tell a kid something like, if my teacher would tell me something, I would take it for face value. Our kids today, whatever you tell them, they could look up. They go to Google. So in other words, they have the power of ownership in their hands. And I think that's so critical for us in the Virgin Islands because for so long, our narrative was never told by us, right? Usually if it's a story about the Caribbean, it's some guy on the Travel Channel talking about food, and it becomes very caricaturish. It makes us out to be, a postcard. So with the Unbreakable series, what occurred, I was home during the hurricanes, and I got upset. I got very angry that our story got ignored, you know, and it was a human thing. And what occurred, I think in life, you could have two options when something occurs that you don't like. You could either have it defeat you, or you could unearth that thing that God put you here to do. And I think for me, what God put me here to do is share our stories and just open a lane for more, as you said, Director Brown, modern day storytellers. And I kind of like that term. So yes, the film series is based on a New York Times op-ed I wrote called Has America Forgotten the Virgin Islands? And then we decided to produce the films. So the first Paradise Discovered film, the concept of Paradise Discovered came from a lot of my colleagues in media. When the hurricanes hit, they kept running these stories saying Paradise Lost. My thing is, though, historically, no one really knows who we are. I mean, historically, when they think of us, they think about beaches, a vacation. So I think we have this unprecedented opportunity for the first time in our narrative to start pushing the soul and the spirit of who we are as a people. And I guess I'm biased, but I don't think there is another. When I think about the Virgin Islands and our unique history, where we're located in the Caribbean as the gateway to opportunity, where we're a mixture of the American political system with Caribbean culture and spirit, I'm going as far as to say where I believe that we're the leader of this region, and we should be. And I think as we push forward as a progressive society, it's necessary for our stories to be told. So the first film spoke about our resilience. You know, it was produced where, man, I was still depressed. I was still messed up. So that film was a very emotional film. So the second film, we decided to think, okay, if we did the unthinkable, because we're the only society in modern American history to have weathered two Category 5 hurricanes back to back in less than 2 weeks. We're essentially historical figures. And I really would like our leaders and our people to own that, to own this truth of how amazing we are. Because as Virgin Islanders, I think we spend a little bit too much time beating ourselves up. We focus a little bit too much on what's negative, when the fact that we did something that no one on the planet has done, and we're still here. And I think it's essential that every young Virgin Islander growing up today takes ownership of that reality. So the second film, we wanted to explore, so what made us these resilient people? What made us, what's in our DNA and our past that built us to withstand these things, and how do we go into the future? So we're going to show you, we're going to present two episodes, two scenes from Unbreakable 2.0. And before we show them, I just a little bit of background. So I'm talking about the history of the place. Forgive me, educators, but I never knew about the revolution of 1733. I mean, as a grown man, I never knew that the first successful slave revolt in the Western Hemisphere occurred on St. Thomas. Haiti had the first permanent one that basically defeated France and put an end to that. But we actually held off the colonial powers for 6 months. I said, wow, like, why don't I know this story? You know, I think if I was growing up and I was taught that story about my history and my roots and what our ancestors did, I think, you know, I may have had more confidence entering into the larger world. So we basically went to St. John, we captured that scene. And then the other scene from the film we're about to show you is with Director Brown, because I was very inspired by the sugar mills. As we're learning our history and understanding who we are, I'm like, wow. So in Dr. Brown's presentation, we discussed how our ancestors once again built and designed these beautiful structures, but didn't get the credit. So with Unbreakable, that's what we're doing. We're taking back ownership of our story, and we're putting the tools in our young people's hands to narrate the world they see and feel and understand, which I believe will make our society a more progressive one, a more unified one, and a more positive one. So my colleague, Ms. Precious, can you start the presentation, the video presentation?
Or Director Brown, is it okay for me to go ahead and share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
I've long contemplated Tim Duncan's calm under pressure, his poise on basketball's great stage, a fluidity of excellence now exuded quietly in Boston. It's because being legendary and unassuming is the VI way. But what makes greatness a birthright in these lands? I search for an answer on the enchanted island to the east of St. Thomas, beyond Pillsbury Sound.
So we are currently in the Theber Garrison ramparts. Its significance being the site of the revolution of 1733 in the Virgin Islands on St. John. And the reason that revolution, it's a revolution because the enslaved people who claimed this space maintained this space well into the following year, 1734. It was about 9 months or so before the Danish got help from the French.
And that was the first, this is the site of the first slave revolt insurrection in the New World.
In the West.
In the Western Hemisphere. Wow.
The first successful revolution of an enslaved people in the West. So this predates the Haitian Revolution and every other story.
Because we always heard the Haitian Revolution was the first. And we respect our Haitian brothers and sisters, but I learned that this is who we are.
Right.
Give me just a glimpse of what our people did here in a snapshot.
So under the leadership of Queen Brefou, she and some others who she called to arms at the time, Kanta and Claus and the like, they organized for a while on the Carolina plantation to help the revolt, to make a move to freedom. And it started at Carolina where, they made their moves to take over or seize that plantation at Great House. They made their move to the fort, carrying the weapons in their bundles of wood so that they go unnoticed. But as they got into the fort and made their move, they unsheathed their weapons and claimed lives in the name of freedom. And they sounded the alarm and it went across the island. And so what started here spread to all the other plantations. And so after a while, the slaves had taken control of the entire island and killed most of the planter families. A few were able to flee, most notably from the Annaberg, Leinster Bay area, by help of apparently a slave who had taken a likeness to those masters. But they held this space
for 9 months.
Yeah. Into the following year, Denmark tried unsuccessfully a few times to reclaim the space from them, but they were organized. They had already started to figure out new ideas of society. They had established connections of trade with neighboring islands, mainly the BVI, because obviously it's the closest.
And some of us tried to swim to the BVI to leave the Tortola.
Yeah. Later on, though, this was when the French came to help Denmark reclaim the space. And so some slaves decided to jump and swim to their freedom on neighboring islands. And some, as oral history would have it, jumped to their deaths.
We are actually the epicenter of one of the most historic, the most courageous act of defiance to oppression the world's ever seen in the Western Hemisphere. So why is it that narrative has been lost to rum and punch?
That's a wicked context, right?
We were royal
we
kings
actually
who defied, who basically did what inconceivable.
Yeah.
If St. Thomas is the face of the VI and St. John our soul, then St. Croix must be the heart that beats the rhythm of our resilience. Once the agricultural giant of the New World, the Crucians exhausted their own supplies, helping us Tomians after Hurricane Irma, leaving them at the mercy of Hurricane Maria. It's where I unearthed more clues to who we are.
This exhibit is called Claiming Spaces, the African story of the sugar mill. So we know that we live a very creolized culture here in the Virgin Islands, where it's both European and African. But for a long time, I think European people have been the victors, and then African people have been thought of as the oppressed through this exhibit. And I never call myself a historian because I'm on a journey. And as you know, history is something, as you said, we're learning to document more. So I don't ever pretend to know everything. I'm on a journey to find out and to share. So I'm learning more about the importance of how African people played a large role of shaping the culture we live, the architecture that we live in and we see in our historical structures, because there were European floor plans for a lot of these spaces, but they're not really what the Europeans expected of these buildings. They're neither Georgian or Victorian. They're something else. They're in a class of their own. And then when we think about sugar mills, you don't look up anything about sugar mills and you try to find the history. The first thing you're going to find is all the beautiful stories of the planters. Those are what you call the plantation owners. You're going to find all their legacies back to 1700s. You're going to see other children and the names of their children and who they married. And then you look up the persons who are of African descent, and they don't even have last names and they're dehumanized. But those are the persons who really built this island and made great wealth for people. But somehow their story is very hidden.
In America, in American paradigm, the Black story is usually told as a monolithic thing. And when I went to college in the U.S. mainland, I realized, to be quite honest, myself and my African American peers, I had to understand the narrative there. And it's almost like you're a Caribbean, you're a Virgin Islander, you just kind of fell into place within their story. And I think we in the Caribbean are trying to say, okay, we are Black people, but we are not monolithic. I think what you're doing is groundbreaking. Because spending time with you, I've learned about the myths. How do you find yourself having to address, I guess, the hierarchy of culture bearers in America who say, well, this is the Black story? And you'll say, no, we have our own story.
Yes, I could just show people, and I hope that through showing and illustrate that they'll find themselves in it. I've always been a heavier woman, and I've always been thought of in my own house as beautiful.
Yeah, Caribbean standard of beauty is
right. And then, but when I watched TV growing up, I wasn't beautiful. So therefore, my standards weren't beautiful to me anymore. So like all those little paradigms, how I talk wasn't good enough. I had to speak like if I was from the States, you know. So and we perpetuated somewhat of that. So I started to just take back my narrative and live my identity. I talk grammatically correct, but I want you to hear my tongue. I want you to hear the nuances of my culture. I wear my dress because that is part of my identity. I want you to know that when you see me, I want to live, breathe, walk, be part of my identity all the time.
I appreciate that.
So that was two scenes from Unbreakable 2.0. We could show more, but I guess we could leave it right. And I'm open to questions as we discuss this new age of owning our story and transforming who we are. Thank you, Ms. Williams, for that note about this project. So what did you guys feel about the segments?
Everyone feel free to ask more questions. Especially for our students who are tuned in. Miss Winter just showed that her entire class is tuned in. Again, we have a storytelling project, and we're giving lectures like this to give you, the students, the power and the tools to know that your oral stories, the stories that you grew up with, are important, and we want you to digitize them. There is prizes. If your teacher will show you the posters, there is prizes, so you're gonna win big. Um, and so please take heed to how you see our presenter, Mr. Bailey, is giving you the tools and how he's using digital filmmaking to tell our stories. Anybody have any questions? Feel free.
Please. And I want to briefly tell the students, I'm going to be biased, but I think there's never been a more exciting time to be a storyteller because of the technology. Because of the technology, your Instagram page, your Facebook page, your TikTok page, that's a theater screen. That's your TV screen. So I think as students, you have to be very cognizant of what we share, because what you share on your social media platforms is a reflection of not only you, but a reflection of the entire Virgin Islands. Because as you know, in an algorithm run social media, if someone hashtags the VI, every video about the VI is going to link to that. So in a way, we've all become ambassadors of our culture and of our story, whether indirectly or directly. So please, questions.
Good morning.
Come on.
My name is Dese Maynard. I'm a local storyteller as well. Griot. I have a dog barking in the background. But I actually just wanted to add some more context, especially for the youth with the Eamu Rebellion.
Yeah.
We have to really make sure that it's not called a revolution and that it was a rebellion, because there are very clear distinctions. The fact that the Eamu were nobility from what is present day Ghana, and they had gained a lot of wealth from selling off their neighbors, from attacking and selling off their neighbors. Their neighbors then came together and attacked the Eamu and intentionally sold off the nobility, took the people in charge and sold them. So that brought them to St. John. When they got to St. John, they immediately said, not us. So they took over the island, but they did not free anybody. They immediately said, you were born here or you were enslaved here, you will work for us now. And that was the disunity that allowed for the Europeans, when they got together, when the French, the English, the Danish, who had been warring with each other in the Caribbean prior to this, this was when they came together and said, we cannot allow them to come together. And so we have to, when we put things out of context and call things a revolution and not a rebellion, and not put things in, we don't learn the true lessons of disunity. When one of us can be free and not all of us, we have to, the whole island is free, and then we will actually be able to defend ourselves as an island. And so I just wanted to add some more context, especially for the youth, so they can understand that these stories, like, history doesn't really care about our feelings. The lessons, we have to look at history for the true lessons of what happened, so that we can learn from the mistakes.
Oh,
and thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And that's why this is important, because the beauty of this is once that story is touched upon, now we have more information and the nuances. But I'm happy we're actually discussing our story. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving us that background information.
Mr. Bailey, can you also talk about the technical aspects of being a filmmaker? How you decide to put things together? You told me that you had like a long journey of getting your thoughts together. When a student is attacking a project, how would you think they could best put their thoughts together to make the presentation thoughtful and engaging to their audience?
Well, that's a great question. So we're very familiar with music, right? And congrats to Teron Thomas for winning the Grammy. Our music is profound here. So I make the correlation of music, because when a great musician is making a song, the best art you can create is art that you want to hear. So when I think about the process of making a film or telling a story, I think about the stories that I wanted to hear, like the revolution. I never knew about it, right? I mean, I hope it's taught more in the schools, but the first thing is, if you're a student and you're eyeing a story, just look around you. Look around you at the things that you care about. So my mother is in the first films. Our elders are getting older. So I wanted to capture who they are from a personal standpoint. So step one, look around you. The stories that are going to change society is right in front of you. This is a story. Us sitting here discussing this, the nuances of storytelling is a story. So step one is students find issues that are dear to your heart. I know it sounds cliche, but it's real. Find things that you care about. Because chances are, if you care about something, you're going to go the extra mile to focus on it, flush it out, and make it a story, right? Step two, when I first started being a filmmaker, I'm a writer first. And then when we transitioned to film, the process back then was very difficult because technology wasn't what it is now. So years ago, you'd have to get certain cameras. They could range you 25,000, 30,000. Now, with these digital devices, you can add lenses to these iPhones that bring you the same level of cinematic quality. So I will tell students, get your iPhone, go out into the community, in your classroom. Maybe there's a person in your neighborhood that's just interesting. These are all characters. And go out and just do it. So an assignment, when we leave here today, go in your neighborhood, wherever you live, focus on someone in your community. That for some, it maybe it's the lady that crosses the students across the street. Find an individual, a relative, someone that you think needs to be heard, something that you value. Put the iPhone on, and your first question is, why do you do what you do? Why is the most important question for a storyteller, for anyone in life, period. When you ask why you're doing something and you really understand the reasoning behind it, chances are you're going to push forward. If that answers the question.
Can you tell us about how these films was received? I know that you've been in multiple film festivals, both nationally and internationally. And what is the sort of reception of persons in the audience when these films have been screened?
That's a great question, because I think in the Virgin Islands, because we're a small place, a lot of times we're in a bubble, per se. We're in a halo. And for me, I'm always curious about what the larger world thinks about our story, right? So we started the tour. We went to about 20 different colleges, Brown University, the University of Notre Dame, and we're happy to say that the films are actually being used in classes at the University of Notre Dame, Stanford University, University of Delaware, and we won the Grenada Film Festival and Toronto Film Festival. So it's interesting. The first thing that hits people is that, one, sorry to say, many people don't realize that we're part of the US. Like, I don't think we understand just how much, from a vacation standpoint, yes, the world knows that. But the context of who we are, our sensibilities, I was very, I won't say remiss, but I was surprised to realize a lot of people didn't know our political status. So a big issue with viewers were our political status. Like, wow, you guys can't vote. You're essentially still a territory, a colony in 2024. So I think that issue was the main issue. It really tugged at people from a political standpoint that here we are in America, but our political status is still defined as a colony. The second issue people were very drawn to was the fact of self-sustainability. The fact that farming, how do we create our own produce in such a small place? So I think Director Brown, a big gateway to films opened up. And I think it's an issue facing the entire Caribbean. And what was very fascinating is that the films are literally connecting people within the Caribbean diaspora, because historically, we're the same people in these Caribbean islands, but we're being divided by water, by travel, right? And it's very expensive to go between islands. So what we found is in St. Martin, in Trinidad, in Grenada, where we screened, all of these people feel that story. It may be called Unbreakable Virgin Islanders, but it's their story as well. So I think for me, that was the most special moment in this process, that using these stories to connect us as one defined Caribbean people. And I think for Virgin Islanders, it behooves us to start understanding, because when you're a colony or territory, you focus so heavily on the larger country that you're territorial, whether it be St. Martin is France, or the Dutch, or whether it be the Virgin Islands, the US, that we tend to forget that there's a whole region of people that we can connect with and make our bonds stronger. So as we go forward with more hurricanes possibly coming, how do we build stronger bonds with our brothers and sisters throughout the Caribbean region? So for me, the most important factor of this film was the reception from other Caribbean people. Because my father's from Trinidad, my mother's from Anguilla. And I always found it fascinating with the Virgin Islands, how, I don't know if it's intentional or not, we tend to stay in our bubble and look stateside for everything, as opposed to understanding the larger Caribbean diaspora and how, as a unified region, it'll be better for us and better for the US. So that was critical, Director Brown, in the fact of how these films are connecting the Caribbean, per se.
Do you have any other subjects that you're planning to do films about?
Well, we're in the process of 3.0, the third film, right? The third Unbreakable film. So it's twofold. If you look at each film is an extension of each other. So the first film took a conversation, which was about who are we? You know, because for me, the hurricanes, like I said, when you grew up in the US Virgin Islands, a lot of your thinking and your scope is focused on going to the US, making a life there, and not necessarily rooted in who we are. So the third film will look further at, okay, with this new society and the demographics are changing. A lot of people have moved here since the pandemic. How will this new population of people, you know, coming for their dreams, wanting to build businesses, own homes, how will that affect the local young entrepreneur group, the local homeowner group? Will there be a competition? Will the new Virgin Islanders, will new people that's coming in, will this new Virgin Island society be built on top of the existing society, or will it unify? And where do we go from there? And that's why I want to keep reinforcing to the students on this in this session that I'm going to say this and say it again. We are in the information age. We've never in our lifetime had the opportunity to write our history and take ownership of it in real time like ever before. So I think it's critical we understand that it's critical. If that answers your question.
How we also have educators in here. How can they help guide some of that thought process to inform our students and to compel them into thinking? Because just speaking about the stories in our neighborhoods that you spoke about, how do we get them to get to that thought process that those stories are just as important as the stories that they see on national TV?
I love that question. I think that's why I'll biasly say I think educators are rock stars. I think the most important people in the fabric of our society are those who teach our young people. I think, honestly, Director Brown, that comes from the teachers themselves. Because let's be just blunt. I think all of us in the Virgin Islands, to some degree, have dealt with the fact that focusing on the American story, the American paradigm, and where we fit into it, as opposed to who we are as Virgin Islanders, and not what we can necessarily take from the US, but what can we add? So I go back to what I just said. We're the only community in modern American history, I repeat, in modern American history, that have withstood 2 Category 5 hurricanes in less than 2 weeks. That is something that no American community can say. So this is a sense of pride that we need to take ownership of. So I think it begins with teachers understanding the value of us first. Because I think with students, if we don't value ourselves as the leadership, we can't expect the students to. And I think when students start to own who they are and have pride about their story, not the gossip, not the slander that's coming on your social media, no, not the provocative, constant back and forth fighting based on ego, but our understanding of how amazing we are, I'm going to bet that the pride that's going to be instilled in them, understanding from which they came, will actually make them a better student and enhance the educational process. So people understand, storytelling is just not about an external experience. When you when you're out in your community and you learn about your community, like my colleague, Miss Petrus, that's on the call, her father is 92, one of the only Vietnam veterans still alive from St. Thomas. That's a story. That's prideful. That's things we need to hold dear. And I think when our students, we start highlighting these types of stories, the stories about the things we have accomplished, not the things we've not done. It's very easy to focus on what's wrong. That's the easy game. But to focus on what we're building and where we're heading, I think then you create a student that's empowered, more confident, and more receptive to education, is what I think. If that makes sense.
I'd like to open up the floor for if we have any administrators, teachers, or students who would like to share any comments or would like to ask a specific question at this time.
I'm going to start calling on people. Ms. Winter. Oh, yes, sir. I'm
Sorry, I just wanted to add another comment. Earlier you brought up like within the Caribbean how we're a leader, and I think there is some things that we lead the Caribbean on, but I think that what I'm really happy about is you connecting with other islands and showing other islands to the point where like youth from this island can realize that we're in a Caribbean that has a lot of things going for it. Other islands next to us actually have a lot better metrics on education, on housing ownership, on tourism, on we can learn a lot of lessons from our neighbors, as opposed to, as you're saying, we always have this very stateside focus. And I'm just like very honored and happy to hear that you're like focusing on getting this story to the Caribbean, our story to the Caribbean, so they can understand us. And so also we can start understanding our neighbors more. And so it's a very important aspect, and I'm very grateful you're doing that.
I agree. Thank you.
I also just have to do some house calls for persons who are in this meeting, organizations, students, and teachers. We have to make sure that we document what we're doing so we can make sure that we have the support to do other initiatives. In the chat, you'll see the forms link. And if you have access to a mobile device, you can also use a QR code that is in the chat. Yes.
And to Mr. Maynard's point, he's actually very correct. When we went to Grenada, I think you guys are familiar. Grenada has this underwater museum of sculpture. It's breathtaking. And like you said, like there are things that we could incorporate here. Like he's right in the sense that although we may lead in certain aspect of, technology and whatnot, there's a lot to learn from the diaspora. There's a lot to learn. So you're 100% right.
My student has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Isa and I'm in Miss Manchester. I would like to ask how you interview.
How do I interview people?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a
question.
So the question is, how do I interview people? That's a great question. Great question, because what's your name, sweetheart? What's your name?
Aislinn.
Aislinn, the most important and the most difficult process of storytelling is the interview process. I approach interviews. Okay, so put you in a hot seat. So the Governor Mapp was in the first film, and the second film, Governor Bryan is in the film. And as we all know, there's always apprehension of politicians. Are they going to tell us the truth? Are they going to be phony with us? I'm big on the truth. So how I approach interviews, say with a governor, say with people who necessarily, maybe a difficult interview, I just try to be honest myself. I try to show the individual when I'm asking them a question about their story and who they are, I try to show them, look, I care. Like, I really want to know this, not because of being nosy or gossip, but I think, sweetheart, information is how we make the world a better place. And I try to let that individual know who I'm interviewing, that your story, who you are, really matters. You may not think it does, but it matters to everyone else. And you being able to share your honesty and your truth and your details of your life and who you are, when other people hear the story, they can relate and they can be inspired. So I really try to let people know I'm not being gossipy or looking for negative dirt, or I'm just honestly trying to understand who you are. And that's what the interview is, my dear. An interview is trying to get to know who we are, trying to understand each other. Because when we understand each other, I think it makes the world a better place. I think a lot of the problems in society is because we don't hate each other, we just don't know each other. And because of that, we get defensive. So I try to approach the interview process by letting that person know I'm asking you questions about your life because I care. Because your life and your story matters not only to me, but to the larger world. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
One more. Make sure you introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Kimani Gordon.
Good morning.
I had a question. How is her grandpa her father, 92?
Huh?
How
I'm listening.
how did her father live to 92?
Ms. Petrus, you want to answer the question how your father, the decorated Vietnam veteran, has survived till the rightful age of 92? That's a great question.
Lots of love and kindness, and he takes care of himself. So, and I guess it's in the genes as well. So I hope to live to 100. So.
That's a great question. It's an honor to live that long. So lots of love and kindness will help you lead. Can't guarantee it, but lots of love and kindness to your fellow individual will help you live a longer life. That answers the question.
I just want to add one quick thing to what you're saying about talking to your elders and talking to people around you is so important, because like so many of these youth don't know like how Hess used to be a giant estuary where there were eels and conch and all these things. And I only learned that by talking to elders on Bytron. I used to love to ride the bus and they love to talk to you. So just asking these questions and learning, what would this used to be? What did this used to look like? When was this building made? Going through Montbijou, the center always throws me off because I used to put my horse in that field, and now there's a center there, and I'm like, it's off. And so it's just very interesting, like speaking to youth and talking to them about what is this, what used to be here, so they understand that things have changed this much in my lifetime, and you can do this much change in your lifetime as well.
I like that point because I think our students as a people, we always fear change. But we never realized we could be the change makers. So the world is not a place that we're helpless and everything is happening around us. Everybody's coming and taking over and doing everything. No, we also have a part to play in changing society, because I will say this, young people, life changes. As hard as it is, things change. You plant a seed, it grows into a tree, to a large mango tree. We just have to make sure that we're changing for the better. So that's a great point.
Very good point. I really love what you said, that how did our narrative get lost to rum and punch? Like that, those are just really strong comments and thought processes. What do you see going well in the Virgin Islands in terms of storytelling and people sharing different narratives than what we were accustomed to when we were quite younger?
So no, I think Director Brown, what we're doing now, You know, the focus in life is really the effort. You know, when you approach something, it may not work, but guess what? You tried. So we were discussing earlier, I think one of the big things is going to be contemporary history, old versus, I don't like that word old. Let's say, in another time and new. So I think there's a perfect union where we can share the stories of our elders while also not forgetting what's happening now. So you're asking what has changed? What has changed is that like never before, Virgin Islanders could assemble from around the world and do this. That's never happened. After the hurricanes, a lot of Virgin Islanders emailed me like, Peter, Mr. Bailey, we're not getting any coverage. Puerto Rico is getting all the coverage. Why is CNN not covering us? And I want to tell the young people this. Gone is the days where you have to rely. No disrespect to CNN, but you have Facebook. If every Virgin, here's an assignment. If every Virgin Island has a group project, and so there's a hashtag, VI History, VI Caribbean Month, VI Rocks, and 100 of us tweet that hashtag on Facebook, on TikTok, on social media, the chances of that going viral is high. So that's what's changed. What's changed is our stories now, we can share it in our voice, on our terms, once we have a collective. So I think, Director Brown, as we move forward, what's essential for all the young people to understand from a storytelling standpoint, storytelling is a collective experience. It's not an individual experience. Like what the brilliant student asked about, how do I do an interview? An interview is not about me. I'm literally asking someone about their life. So it's a collaboration. So I think it's critical to understand storytelling is a group project. It's us trusting each other enough to share our stories and believe in it. So what has changed is the technology has given us the tools like never before to not only share our story, to promote our story, to preserve our story, right? Because 100 years from now, we're going to be gone. But this video is going to last the test of time. And I'm proud to know that the people, the aliens coming from away, when they dig up our artifacts and they see this video, we're being represented the right way. And this is why storytelling is very important, because if we don't tell our story, someone else will. And history has proven to us when other people tell our story, it's not the most flattering and empowering. So what has changed is we have the tools to share our story now without gatekeepers, but it's going to be critical that we trust as a collective and understand it's a group project. If that answers the question.
I have a slightly controversial question for you.
Hey.
So we see the rise of storytelling, but we see the rise of sort of like ratchet TV now, or people behaving badly.
Yes.
And nobody should be censored in this time of day, but what is the dangers of telling the full story of persons, not even people of color, just the ratchet TV is not synonymous with people of color. It's also synonymous to every sort of race and ethnicity. But what is the dangers to that, to the fabric of our society, if you think there are dangers?
Well, I may get in trouble for saying this. Juve is coming up, right? Personally, I am not going to tell a person what clothes to put on or how. I don't judge. But we have to understand the difference. Where technology came in, storytelling is a craft. It's a craft. And I tell people this. Would you fly a plane if the pilot doesn't have a license? Will you allow yourself to be operating on if the surgeon didn't go to medical school? So what we're seeing with social media is we're in the age of attention, where we're yearning for attention, right? So the danger of technology and honest storytelling is understanding, are you led by the story or are you led by the likes, the attention? So in other words, you will find, say, a young lady, a young man post a video half naked and acting crazy. Are they trying to share a story, Director Brown? I don't think they're trying to share a story. I think our young people are falling into the trap of trying to get attention, because social media, in many ways, it's a business tool. So I think we have, as a society, we got to draw a line between what is honest storytelling and people trying to promote something, right? I think there's a difference. So our carnival product is a perfect example. And this is an assignment. How do we define carnival? I would like to think carnival is just not people being half naked in the street dancing. I would like to think there's a more historical aspect to it. But let's be honest, when you're a child, you crave attention. You crave attention. So I think when you say ratchet TV, I think what has happened, sadly, Black trauma is for sale. If you go on Facebook right now, you're going to see Black people just fighting all the time. Whether it be a podcast, Black men and Black women saying, you don't love me, I don't love you. It's just, so is that storytelling, or is it people pushing a brand to get attention? So we have to know the difference. Black trauma is for sale. If you look at the internet, there's somebody on a podcast telling women, well, you're lonely because of this. Guys, women aren't this. What those people are really doing, they're pushing and promoting themselves. So we have to understand, with advancement, there's always a downside to stuff. So as a journalist, I really want people to understand there's honest storytelling, and then there's people just pushing a brand. And sadly, a lot of our young people, I don't want to sound like some old fogey, but I want our kids to understand there is a difference with you sharing the beauty of your truth or just going on the gram to be on the gram to get some attention. Because I see the videos and I look at some of our kids like, why did they post that? But for some reason, the way the algorithm works, it rewards the bad behavior. If I go on Facebook and I post a positive video, let's all unite and go pick some flowers and heal the world, it probably won't get any traction. If I go on Facebook and I say Director Brown is a this, and I make up some story about her, and then I say I want to slap her, it's going to go viral. So I want our young people to really be careful with understanding this thing we're on right now. It's a tool, and how we choose to use it is going to define where we go as a society. Because I would like to tell all our kids, if you die tomorrow, if we disappear, do you want the last thing, the portrayal of who you are as a person, to be you fighting, cursing, being naked? So I think when we look at carnival in particular, I will say this once again, I'm not going to be Mr. Preacher Man, but I would like to think our carnival is a bit more than the constant vulgarity. So I think there's a difference between storytelling and ratchet behavior to get attention. And I think, sadly, a new hustle, a new brand, a new business for a lot of young people. Let me try to get as much views on social media as I can, and then that will turn into an advertiser or money. Not understanding, because I'm in this business, that has a shelf life. That has a shelf life. There's a young singer, I won't say who, but I think she's an incredible artist, an incredible singer. Her voice is amazing. And I recently saw her posting these half-naked videos on the gram. And I think her idea is I'm selling my, sexuality to get the views, because I think the game is, okay, I sell this to attract attention, then people like my music. There's a danger in that. There's a danger in that. And the danger is whatever you put out to the world, it stays there. It stays there. So I would like our young people to really understand the difference between trying to get attention and trying to use these tools to empower themselves. And I think as educators, I can only imagine what you guys deal with on a day-to-day basis with certain of these videos these kids are posting. So I think it goes back to that sense of self-worth and self-value, to let our kids know, yes, the part of our story, a story has different parts. But my issue, Director Brown, as Black and brown people, why is it we always promote the negative or the gory part of our story. It's like being a black man in America as a writer. And when I would write for Time, a Newsweek, in these places, they always wanted you to write about some gangsters. If you look at a movie, growing up, all black men, it's changing now, but historically, anytime you turn on the TV, a black guy in a movie, he was a gangster. He was a drug dealer. He was a thug. If a black woman was in the movie, she was loud. She was angry. She was a stripper. And we've seen it. And what we're seeing with Ratchet TV Director Brown is the buildup of all of that, where our kids now think black life means drama and chaos. So I think it's very critical that we tell these other stories. So I think that Ratchet TV is not necessarily storytelling, it's shock value. It's me acting crazy to get some attention. So I think it's very critical our students understand we are more than what we're seeing on our timeline. Because personally, Director Brown, I'm getting very upset with the constant podcast of Black people fighting, of us just abusing each other back and forth. So I'm going to say as far that that's not storytelling. That's an agenda. That's an agenda, because I'm not saying the negative in life does not exist. But why is it with our stories, that's only what's pushed out there? So we have to really understand there's a difference between you going on the internet to share your truth, to empower you and your community, or just going on the internet. I want to get some attention, so I'm going to go out there and cuss and act crazy. And we've seen that. And sadly, we've seen some of our young people die because of it. On the Facebook, taunting people, think, okay, they're going viral. I want to go viral. So like I said, I'm not preaching, but I've never seen so much nakedness on the internet in my lifetime. So I think it's an understanding of storytelling. Is it used to empower or it's weaponized? And I think to some degree, social media can be a weapon. So we need to know how to use it. We really need to know how to use it responsibly, if that answered the question.
Mr. Des, did you want to add something, sir?
Yes, I just wanted to say it's a great point that he's making about content being kind of making sure that it has substance in a sense, because we don't want to just be putting things out there for nothing. And he made a point about you wouldn't want your last memory to be. And I think that that's something that a lot of kids worry about on this island, because getting old on this island is a luxury. And so people want to be seen, and recognizing that a lot of these kids are making videos because that they recognize that they want to be able to be seen in the world, and empowering their truths. Because for a long time, a lot of us growing up were told children are seen and not heard. And there's a lot of things going on where we need these youth's perspective on. When COVID happened, we needed to know what they needed to learn. We needed to know what classes were important. Their perspectives are important to us so we can build what they need. And so just empowering our youth and letting them know that substance, we actually we don't just want to see you dance. That's not we're not going to be mad at you, but we want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what you want. We want to know what your goals are so we can help you to get to those parts. And so these avenues are mediums for you to tell us what you want, tell us what you need. And yeah, you're an example for that. And I'm just really grateful that you're doing it. And thank you again, Ms. Brown, for organizing this.
Mr. Bailey, at this time, we're going to wrap up because it's the end of intervention class. Again, folks, if you could please fill out the forms. You have the QR code and you have the link so that we can continue initiatives like that. Mr. Bailey, we thank you so much for giving us inspiration, taking the time out to give us your thought process. And we just appreciate that you are a storyteller from the Virgin Islands and you're taking storytelling into a contemporary age. So we appreciate you so much.
Thanks for everyone. And once again, educators are the backbone of our society, really and truly. So I'm honored. Thank you so much.
So at this time, I will close out. If there are any last questions or concerns? Seems like it's not. So Mr. Bailey, thank you once more. Have a good day.
You too.